And we are live. Welcome to the show today. I'm super excited about today's guest because this is somebody I've been kind of following their career for a long time. We started in a very similar space, family entertainment, and she's got a book that's talking about things that we need to have more conversations about in this attraction business. What I'm most excited about today's speaker or today's guest on the show is that we're going to be talking about people first strategizing, revolutionizing sales and service in the attractions industry. Now, why that excites me is because this is the first time we've had a guest on the show who's actually going to be addressing the topic of sales, something many of you may or may not be comfortable talking about. It's funny, in our pre-conversation before we went live, I went live today with this guest. She mentioned that many people look at sales as a bad word, but the truth is people buy from those they know and trust. And I'm very excited to have this guest on the show today to talk about where sales in the attraction industry are going and how we can change. I'm trying to think of the right word, but how we can change the way people feel about this conversation around sales, because it's necessary and it's needed in every business. It's the heart of the business, quite frankly. So without further ado, I'd like to welcome our next guest to the stage. So if you can give her a warm welcome, Beth Standlee. Welcome to the show. Did I get your last name correct?
Standlee, you got it.
Okay, perfect.
Yes, you did great. I can say Standlee, and people will leave that D out and everything. You were perfect. You were perfect.
Oh, good. I'm so glad. Well, Beth, welcome to the show. And before we jump in, because I've got a lot of questions for you, I really do love this topic of sales, and particularly because so often in my role and in our company, we're dealing with ticket booth operators, we're dealing with food and beverage managers, and everybody who's having to do all the different aspects of sales in these organizations. And this is a conversation that we've not yet had on the show, just really focusing on sales. But before we get started, would you mind telling us just a little bit about who you are?
Sure.
Maybe, what got you into the industry? I love that question because I think everybody always has such a cool story about how they ended up here. And
Yep.
and I always say, once you're in for life. So
Crazy. That's what I said. It gets in our DNA, right?
yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's funny. I got in the industry honestly because I got addicted to the game of bowling. Isn't that funny?
Ooh,
So I started bowling obsessively and figured that I needed to support my habit with a little work because I was a better worker than I was a bowler. Although I have a 298 to my name, I'm a real
love it.
and I had the opportunity to help reopen an iconic place in the Dallas-Fort Worth area called the Bronco Bowl and begin working there in the party and the sales space. I had been a Tupperware lady for 11 years. And so I had a tremendous amount of direct sales and sales training. And so it just was the way I was made, right? And it's the training that I had up until that point. I then moved over and went to work for Neil Huppauer in the Dallas-Fort Worth area at a place called Fun Fest. So he's who created Main Event. So I was pre-Main Event, and maybe it's arrogant to say helped devise many of those systems that got implemented, I think, that I hope live on today. Moved over to a direct national sales director position for a large chain, and then sold capital equipment in the industry. In '05, I had what Michael Gerber refers to as an entrepreneurial seizure, and decided that people were buying capital equipment from me because I was going on site and helping them learn to grow their group event sales and their party sales. And I literally had lunch with my husband one day and was like, why don't we make a company that that does that. And then if it doesn't work well, that's not my fault. I'm not selling that stuff. If they want to get on after me about stuff that doesn't work, I can own it. I can shoulder it. And so TrainerTainment was born in '05, and we really built our business based on sales coaching and helping people grow group and party sales. And we worked a ton with sales, service, and leadership. And so today we have a strong business coaching program. I'm a scaling up certified coach. So we do help people do strategic planning, and we probably have 50-50, as many business coaching clients as we do sales coaching clients. But it's great work. I have a tremendous number of talented coaches on the team, and we're having fun every day. We help people grow very simply. That's who we are, what we do, and I love it.
I love that. I love hearing people's journey. And I don't know if you know this about me, but I started because I loved the game of laser tag.
Oh, there you go.
I would sneak away anytime that I could to go play, and I had a league that I played with while I was my first two. I did 2 years. I'm unfortunately a college dropout, but I dropped out to play laser tag. And I got an opportunity as a GM at a family entertainment center. And I think back then many people didn't see the vision of what I was doing. And maybe I didn't even really. I mean, I was, 20 years old at the time. Yeah. And I had this position as a GM, really helped that business grow. And still to this day, everybody teases me and my family because they're like, she literally quit school to play laser tag. She loved that game so much. And I do love it. And I still love it to this day. We have a joke in the family because I never let the kids win.
Well, good. Well, you should. That makes weak kids. Like, they know you let them win. They know how good you are.
I let them win in other places, but not laser tag. I'm like, you guys got to beat me. You got to get good enough to beat me. That's how this is going to work. But I do love that story that you told about loving the game of bowling because, for you, it had a big enough impact to kind of push you down this path.
Yes.
Of now helping facilities like like bowling facilities or family entertainment centers, water parks. I'm sure you're working with. I mean, the attractions industry has grown so much in the last 20 years that we've been a part of it. And, I think it's such a cool thing that is your journey as well. And that we share a very similar sentiment because, there are a lot of people in the world that think that's crazy or wild.
And I don't. Like, I totally embrace you and I don't even know how we have not already been best friends, but I think there's an opportunity here, Sondra.
I love it. Yeah. I love it. I feel the same way. I'm like, oh my gosh, that's an amazing story. I've never met anybody who has one like that. I mean, I know ride operators who make it all the way to executives.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
The path there is a path here for people. I know that's a little bit about what we're gonna talk about today, but I do believe that there is a path for people in this industry, no matter where you're starting, a career path that can take you through an entire lifetime. And this is such a great industry to be a part of. But I really do want to jump into sales if that's okay with you.
Okay, let's jump.
Yeah, I like this idea of talking about sales because, like you, I love the word, but you mentioned to me earlier you have a name for it in your book.
Yes, my sister, when I wrote my book, my sister was so sweet. One of the first ones that read the book, and she said, I really love this, but I don't know what the word smarmy means. I had to look it up in the dictionary. Well, I can tell you the picture next to the word smarmy is that uncle that comes to Thanksgiving in the plaid jacket and he's got a deal for you. Like, that's how people envision salespeople. And, I don't think we should hide from it. I don't think we ought to make up fancy titles that are confusing about what we do. I don't think you ought to place ads that say you're looking for an event coordinator. You will not get a salesperson if you put an ad out for an event coordinator. If you want somebody to do sales, Robert Louis Stevenson says everybody lives by selling something. Oh my gosh. So here's the whole thing about being live. How about that? That's a whole lot of Beth. Let me I did a hand signal and that happened. And I never know what the extra hand signal is to quit it. So I'll find it and get my face
Beth,
not so.
this is why I always tell people before we get started. I said, this is a live show. We're real people doing a real conversation here. There you go. Well, I
Maybe
love
that's
what you.
what I do.
I think it's interesting that you when you look at the word smarmy and you see this person, because everybody thinks of like a car salesman or maybe even
Yeah,
a timeshare sales people,
yeah,
which
yeah.
somebody's got to do that job too, right? Like
That's
I'm
right.
not about shaming anyone in sales because I think that it is the lifeblood of a business. To be
It
honest,
is.
we know, and I'm sure you know these statistics. The statistics in business are really not great, right?
Mhm.
90% of them will fail within 10 years, and
Oh yeah,
almost 100% of them fail because of lack of sales.
that's right. That's right.
And which is interesting to me because there's not a lot of talk in attractions about sales. You don't see a lot of people get on stage talking about this. And it is an important part of the business. Here at Gatemaster, we train on sales. Everybody in my company does 15, 20 minutes of sales training, no matter the role that they're in. Because in my opinion, if you are a developer, you still
Yeah.
might have to persuade us at some point, and you've got to be able to have those conversations. I think like sales training is exceptional in helping people communicate. And if you don't
It
mind,
really is.
I'd like to. I'm curious what your thoughts are on this. When I first started in sales, probably like for Gatemaster, I think it was about 2008, 2009. I wasn't very aggressive. Isn't the right word because I'm a woman. I don't ever really get aggressive as far as that goes. But I didn't fight hard enough for some of the businesses. And one time I was in a sales training, and one of the gentlemen on the stage, he had said, if you have a product that will help someone, you have an ethical duty to sell it to them.
It's brilliant. Yeah.
It was
That's
brilliant. It actually brought tears to my eyes because I had been selling Gatemaster at that point for nearly 10 years. And if you knew how many attractions had came to me and said, I went with this other guy because you didn't follow up,
yeah.
or you didn't pressure, you didn't put enough pressure on me to buy your
Yeah.
product.
Yeah.
And it's why it brought tears to my eyes, because I realized that I could have helped these people, and I didn't, because my
That's
own
right.
fear of being too
Yeah.
pushy or whatever
Yep.
that looks like came into play. But at the end of
Yep.
the day, I think this is the same thing attractions are facing. They have a product that can help people.
They can. People need to. We work too hard in this country. We're under too much stress. And when people can go do recreation, I think of it as recreation, and they can go play. And yes, we have an obligation to help people go play. When an attractions location books a team building type event with a company, people learn about each other because they behave differently when they play than when they work, and it can strengthen their productivity and their relationships at work. You absolutely are spot on. You have a responsibility to sell well. I love that. In my book, this is a perfect time. In my book, People Buy from People: How to Connect Personally in an Impersonal World. One of my favorite quotes, and I use it often, is great selling is about helping other people.
Yeah.
I never think I do something to somebody. I think I do it for them. If I am persuasive, I could talk people into things. I don't want to.
Right.
I want to bring them. I want to find out what they need. I'm a hyper qualifier and try to listen to what's going on and to see if we fit, because we don't fit. We don't fit for everybody.
Yes.
And I can remember way in the old days when I was working at Fun Fest, and there was a QZR down the street. Oh, Sondra, you're going to love this story. And we had, our vests were too big. Like, you needed to be 8 years old to wear, to play the tag game we
Sure.
had in the day. But the QZR down the street had some smaller vests, and so littler ones could play. And there were many times where I would have a 5 or a 6-year-old mom or dad calling to book a birthday party, and I was like, "You're really going to be best to call the QZR." I had their darn phone number so that they could easily call and book that, and that's great selling, because they brought their 8-year-old and they brought their 12-year-old and they brought their 15-year-old, because they never forget that you did the right thing for them.
Yeah. I think there is a lot of truth to just doing what you can to help somebody out, right?
Yeah.
And sometimes that is selling them something that would help them out, and often, like I said, our whole team trains, even if they're not in sales. And why I think that's important for us as a company is because oftentimes we are having to convince parks that there's a process that might work better for them. We're just selling them the process, right? We're not even, we're just trying to get them on board for solving an issue, with line cues or whatever that looks like, that we might be able to help them.
That's great. That's great. I think a teacher is selling in her class, his or her classroom all day long.
Yeah.
I think the CEO of the company is always trying to get buy-in from the team, and we're all in them.
We're all in it.
We're all in it.
Yeah. Well, Beth, in your book, you emphasize the importance of personal connections in sales. And, one, I'm curious, what inspired you to write this book? So this is a loaded question. And can you share any key takeaways that that this audience can apply to the attractions industry?
Sure.
I know, spoilers, but we're all about them here.
No, that's a great. It's a really good question, and it's joyful. It's joyful to talk about it. I had a book on my mind for years and years and years, and I do a lot of writing. But it's one thing to write. I'm the party professor in Replay magazine, and I have not actually put out a ton of my own blogs lately. We've got talented people on our team, so others are doing it. But for years, I blogged at least once a week with newsletters and things like that. But a book is really different. And I had to get my head wrapped around, what did I want that book to be about? And I actually used a coach. I thought I could do it. I got a book that got recommended to me, Stop Stalling and Start Writing Your Nonfiction Book. So Nancy Erickson is the book professor, and she's fabulous. And I followed her process. I got her book, followed her process, and then got her on the phone and said, can you help me get this across the finish line? And because I was barely out of the gate. Agonized over every word. Well, when I can sit down and write an article in 30 minutes and spend 40 minutes polishing it and be done. This book, I think it's a total of 108 pages, and I think I agonized over every word. I'm actually in the process of doing the second edition. We think there will be about 40% more, because I released it in 2019, and it's so funny because it says how to personally connect in an impersonal world. And think about that. What happened in 2020? We got so disconnected from each other, and we did everything we could to be together. People have to be connected. And so my husband passed away during 2021 from COVID. And so there's a lot more to say. And it was funny because in 2020, when I read it out loud for Audible, I was like, oh, shoot, I wish I'd have told that story. Oh, dang it, I needed to add that. And so, like I say, I think I'm in the process right now of launching the second edition. So I'm excited about that to come. I haven't mentioned that anywhere, so you'll be the first.
Well,
and I'm also working on another new book. And I think that the thought behind it is the fact that I think through writing, I have been very influenced in my life through writing and through speaking and attending speaking events, and have just had so much influence by the things I've read, by the messages that I've heard. And I want to be that influence. If I can make this much difference, I want to do that. And I think that's what we as entrepreneurs want to do as well. We believe we're making a difference in the world. The coach really helped me get my head wrapped around it, because what I do first is to connect. In the first chapter of the book, the point is that you can develop a financial future that maybe you couldn't have dreamed of, and freedom in your life, and kind of especially if you're a woman. And the book's not just for women, but I'm female, and I started my life a little bit backwards of what I thought I was going to do. I went to college, and I tease that I got my MRS pretty quickly, and then my MOM real quickly after that. So for those of you who can't spell, that's Mrs. and then mom. And then I did the mom thing again 2 more times. And so at a very young age, I really took a path that wasn't what I had planned. And I, I wound up selling Tupperware real early, and so that gave me just a ton of sales experience.
Yes.
And I love that, and I had a knack for that. But salespeople are not born. I was very coached. I was very trained. I understood about it. But it's funny because that first chapter is all about connecting with the reader. And, that's the first step in the sales process, is that you
Yeah.
have to be connected to somebody first. And so then that's kind of what the book does. I make that connection. I hope I provide encouragement and support to people who want to build a career in sales or who are thinking about it. I lay out what I believe an excellent sales process is. I talk in the beginning about getting rid of the head trash, about sales, and I take a pretty hard line. Like, I hate for people to use words like, "Oh, they ghosted me," or I couldn't get them to call me back. Well, right, it's not their job to call
Yes.
you back. It's your
Yep.
job to call them. And so I'm a born in Arkansas, Texas gal, so I don't soft shoot anything. I pretty much say it like I think it. I think I'm nice, but hope I tell the truth too. And then, like I say, lay out the sales process, and then offer up the encouragement about doing big things with whatever you do. Like,
I
whatever you do, if you're the toll booth worker, I want you to be the very best one.
and
And I want you to love it.
the thing that I love about sales and what you're saying is, one, you are connecting and you're serving other people, but at the end of the day, if you really think about sales, sales is life. You are always going to have to. One of my mentors always says, "Hey, if you're married, you had to convince somebody to marry you. You got to be a good salesperson, right? Like,
That's
or if
right.
you're in a
That's right.
relationship." And I always laugh when I hear that, because it is so true. There's
Yeah.
we it has such a negative connotation, but at the same time, like, it's a necessary part of life. We're always
It is.
having to sell. I'm gonna have to sell to my girlfriends where we're gonna go to dinner on Friday, right? Like, there's
Yeah. Yeah.
always this.
That's right.
This is a constant in life, and I'd love that what you're doing is you're normalizing this. It's nice because
Oh, that's nice. That's a great way to put it.
yeah, because it's something that, and you brought up the pandemic too, and I'd like to just go back to that a little bit, because what we've seen, especially supporting parks through not only 2020 but the years that followed as they tried to
Yeah.
rebuild their businesses, those that could even hang out. I mean, I don't talk very much about this, but we lost about 40% of our small to mid-size attractions that were family owned and operating.
Yeah.
It was a devastating time for
Yeah.
many of those families or privately held businesses that couldn't make it for those 2 years that they were shut down.
Right.
And one of the things that I think got lost in that mess that happened, right, was this institutional knowledge that someone like you has, that people need to access in order to do a good job. I mean, I can't tell you how many of the employees that we are working with today that are managing our systems have maybe 1 or 2 years experience in
Yeah.
attractions. They're new.
Yeah.
And that's kind of what got me to create this show, was to have people like you sharing this information that's been available all these years, but it's needed now more than ever.
Yeah, I think you make a great point there, because the shift, and there is a big shift. The shift is, they want to do things a little more disconnected. They want email to do the heavy lifting.
Yes.
Text to you know, and listen, I think once I know you, I may text and email you every day or whatever, see you out on LinkedIn. And I think all that's just fine because I know you now. And I'm gonna read anything I get in your, I'm gonna hear it in your voice and that sort of thing. But it is a poor substitute for connection if it's the initial connection. I do think people get to say how they want to be connected with, and I think that's important. But you know, I mean, when I'm buying something as serious as a memorial for my spouse's graveside, I called and spoke to somebody, and then I never spoke to them again. He did everything by text and email. Now, I don't agree with that. And maybe if I were 35, that would be okay, but I'm not 35. And that was inappropriate, I thought. And so I think it's important to find out, how do people want to be communicated with? And I think if you think that you can, Mark Hunter, one of my favorite authors, talks about spray and pray. If you think that mass email is going to do the job for you, you better pray a lot. You know,
I mean, we're still picking up the phone and calling people.
Yeah.
I mean, I started in sales in the early 2000s. So, you know, and honestly, I've been doing sales my whole life.
Yeah.
I just didn't realize it. I didn't realize that was for me until really I started teaching our software to parks and realizing, like, I've got to advocate for these changes that they need to make. Because oftentimes the people who hire us are not the people who are assigned to us once they contact us.
That's
Right.
correct. That's correct. Yeah.
And so I'm still having to sell. I realized I was having to sell again at times. And or, you know, whoever the salesperson at the time sold to the decision maker, and then it's being passed to the team, having to convince that team why these changes were going to benefit them, and setting goals and being able to measure what that looks like. But what I think is interesting is still to this day, you know, we tell our team, get on the phone, right? Because the connection is important. You have to humanize this experience, right? You can't tell somebody's tone through email or text.
And text is even more difficult, and you can read things that are not there.
Yes.
You know, for sure. Yeah. It's in the process, we think that the connection piece is at the highest level in person. And of course, you and I attend trade shows and stuff like that. And at a park, lots of people are coming in. I have been into parks where I'm standing there trying to book an event, and they said, well, it's really easier if you do it online. Easier for who?
Right.
You know, and the thing is what we sell at a family entertainment center, it is not tangible. It's not transactional. It's not something they're going to pick up. I mean, maybe they're buying shirts and, you know, merch and stuff, but primarily they're purchasing an experience.
Yes.
And there's no website. There's nothing that can sell the experience like the enthusiasm of somebody who loves a game of laser tag. If they have laser tag, or somebody who's, you know, it's so funny. Way long ago on site, I had this event put together that was I call it play therapy, not team building. And they would play games, they would play tag, and then they would finish up in bowling. And I could sell it all day long. You know, it was so much fun. But I had not played laser tag. Girl, when I went in and played laser tag, there was nobody that booked another event from that day forward that didn't book laser tag. It was hysterical. But that's the experience of it. And there are plenty of people on site that have that genuine enthusiasm. You know, at a restaurant, if I talk to a wait staff, and I think wait think wait staff and bartenders get it that they're in sales because so much of what they get paid is commission or
Sure.
tips.
Yeah.
But if I say to a waitress or a waiter, well, what do you recommend? And they're like, yeah, I'm like,
Right.
oh God, we picked a terrible place to eat. But when they are, well, my favorite is, well, I eat it almost every day. Well, I'm like, well, I want that then, and my experience is already way up here now compared to the first example.
Yeah. Oh, I love that you use that example. So I did spend a little time waiting tables
Oh,
in my
I think
day.
everybody should, but
Yeah,
yes.
and I was fortunate enough, I got to train, or I got to train in Los Angeles, working with very high-end clientele. Most of who we served were celebrities, and,
Oh,
but it was fine dining, right?
okay.
And they used to give us a little bonus, whoever could sell the most desserts at the end of the night. And they
Oh,
had a chocolate cake that, and now everybody knows I love chocolate cake still to this day. They had this molten lava chocolate
oh, yeah.
cake, and
Yeah.
I would sell out of the chocolate cake every single night because it's easy, because I really did love it. I did
Yeah.
love it, and I think that's really what we're saying here today, is that when you love something, it's easy to sell, right? Or it's
What
easy to
is?
convince
There's a
somebody to at
passion.
least try it.
That's right. That's right. That's right. And there are people in the locations that have great passion about pieces of what they're doing. And when they will choose to engage with the guest instead of just worry about the transaction. Like, I think that the lowest level of sales is transactional.
Sure.
You
Yeah.
have that. I want it. Here's my money. Thank you very much. Okay. And and then we go up the ladder. We created, to go with People Buy from People, a workbook that
Wow.
that has that. My team did this because so many times we read something and we think, oh, I'm going to do that, and we don't. And so the workbook is a reinforcement. And so we have this whole continuum about, are you a transactionist, a reservationist, an account manager, a sales amateur, or a sales pro? And the whole strategy is to try to work people through the system so that they become sales professionals. And I think out on the website, I'll send you a link, because I think on our website we have a test, an assessment that shows you where you are along that continuum. So I'll make sure you get that
Yeah,
for
I would
this.
love to see that. It's interesting because one of the roles I've taken on for the last few years is speaking at a woman's aesthetic. I mean, it's majority women. It's an aesthetics college, college, so it's medical aesthetics. And
Okay.
I've been fortunate enough to speak to each graduating class for the last 4 or 5 years, and I actually did develop a sales personality test, which I think you would
Oh,
find interesting. But
yeah.
for us, it was focused on that particular industry.
Okay.
One of my personal uh, purpose or goals is to help 100 women-owned businesses achieve that first $1 million in revenue, because
Oh,
it's
that's
it's a
wonderful.
game changer, right? Like, if you
It
can,
is.
getting
It
to
is.
that first million is difficult. Multiple from there, you're just multiplying, and this being
Yes.
an entrepreneur. So, one of my missions is to help women achieve that goal. So I developed the last maybe a year or so. I developed this sales quiz that I have them take, which identifies, are they product sellers? Are they relationship sellers?
Yeah.
Are they experts? Right? Because at the end of the day, we really, and there's one more, I can't remember which one it is, but
Consultant, maybe?
the deal maker.
Consultant? Deal maker.
Yeah, so
Okay.
I have
Okay.
four different types that they can find themselves in. And yeah, I'm surprised how often people will cross many of them. Sometimes they might be equal parts deal maker. Deal maker is actually the least one I found.
Oh,
And I think it's because that's a person that's an entrepreneur, right?
yes.
And
Yes.
those we know not everybody is an entrepreneur. You could be an entrepreneur for
That's
sure,
right.
right? But I
Yes,
think,
that's right. You own your position inside the company. You betcha. We
yeah.
want we
So
want those folks to work with us, don't we?
yeah, and I love this little test, because what it did for so many of the young women that are about to need to monetize this skill. It's a different, like I said, it's a different industry, but they've learned these great things and they need to figure out how to sell it. And then they're like, oh, I'm really good at facials, but I'm not great at business and sales.
Yeah.
So giving them just that little key component, like, am I a product seller? Am I a deal maker? Am I a relationship person? So they can lean into that.
You got it.
And I love what you're saying, because I think like these things are so important to, especially for a team. Let's say an attraction that has a team. I'm sure an assessment like yours can really help them determine, like, do I have my team members in the right place? Everybody can sell, but if
Yes.
you're a relationship seller, you're probably going to do better in, guest services
Yes.
or being out and greeting guests. There's
Yes.
still a sales component to that, right?
That's right.
And Beth, I know your company focuses on training and coaching sales and service teams, but what are some of the key elements you believe to be essential in building a strong, effective sales team? And I mean, particularly, I know I mentioned the medical aesthetics that somehow, I mean, I don't know how I got that gig. I love it. It's been one of the most rewarding things that I do. I think it's because I like that, I am an avid, I like facials. I like Botox. I mean, all the, I like all the things that keep us young. I like the idea of keeping our youth, right?
Yeah.
Except for this.
Well, your skin is beautiful. Your skin is fabulous. So,
Well, thank you. But, as far as the attraction industry goes, I'd love to know what you think those essential elements are to building that strong and effective sales team.
yeah. So on the floor, that would be different. That would be very guest service focused, people first. It's about them. It's not about you. I think that everybody, to a certain extent on the floor, if they could just lift themselves a little bit past just transaction, it would mean that they're engaging with the guests. They're like, if they had the mindset of, I'm going to be responsible for this guest coming back tomorrow, and that
Right.
they're going to bring a friend with them. Like, if we could just turn everybody on that way. One of the things that we teach in our service stuff in a bowling based center is to, oh, see, I did it again. So, I found out how to fix it. There we go. Woo. One of the things we do is teach them to do the 7th frame checkup. And so that gives them a cue about when to go engage with the guest. And a lot of times that's all a team needs to know. And then we load their lips up with, hey, how are you doing? Are you having fun? Could I add time? Oh, wow, you look thirsty. Could I run get you a beer? Any of those things. What we specialize in is building that great team in the sales office. It's going to champion your group and your party revenues, because we feel like that, and it may be different in parks. My numbers may be skewed and too big for park revenue because the walk-in traffic so high in a park. But in a family entertainment center, we know that you better have at least 20% party and group sales, just as a benchmark. And most of the time when we get involved, people are not at that level. We think any combination that gets you to 30%, so 15% groups, 15% birthdays, or 20 and 10, whatever that 30% number, that's healthy. And the reason that we say that it's healthy is because enough new people are getting exposed to your center and living it and breathing it and feeling it, and they're going to come back. And then we see superstar performers at 40%, because when you can have that predictable revenue, you can do big things. You can schedule better. You can do better cost of goods, all those kinds of things. So I guess that's really the why to build that sales team. And at the very minimum, we want to look for a group champion and a birthday party champion. And we need to place ads or look inside of our teams, run our personality tests, and see if we have somebody we can promote up. But what happens is a lot of people will grab people who are really friendly, because they think, oh, well, Beth can talk to anybody. Well, that doesn't necessarily make me a great salesperson.
Right.
And it doesn't make me have any skills. You know, I mean, we could go to college today and we might have a course on persuasion, or we might have a course on communication, but they are not going to teach you. And I don't know of any business course that teaches, and of course, I haven't been to college in a long time, so heck if I know, maybe they do have, but I didn't get exposed to any sales training. All the sales training I've had has been Zig Ziglar and Grant Cardone and Mark Hunter, and, you know, things that I've gathered for myself. And I think that that's what's out there. And there are some great sales training companies out there, but as a company, it's difficult to figure out how to invest in that. And our sales strategies work across multiple organizations, but our expertise is in this environment. So you need somebody that's not an event coordinator, that's an operations person. You need somebody with sales acumen, and you better have a desire to place an ad that uses the word sales and not some fancy title. You need somebody. It's funny, the birthday champion kind of is a balance between ops and sales. With the group sales, you don't want them to go hold all the events they book unless you want to cost yourself sales time and money. I bet you don't at Gatemaster have your salespeople going to do installs, or do you?
No. No, I mean,
Yeah.
you know, so we do things, we've done things a little bit differently because we do all train in sales. So,
Yes.
you know, I like, because relationships are important to us. You know, the average attraction stays with us for over 10 years. That's like unheard
Right.
of in technology. But I think a large part of that is because our salespeople stay connected
And that's
throughout the relationship. You know, in fact, you know, I one of the gals on my team that does sales and then is also supporting a site, you know, because with what we do too, you got to understand the business a little bit.
yes, absolutely.
And we've got a site that wants to go live. They said 2 weeks. Can we do it in 2 weeks? But she has a funeral this weekend. And, you know, the other nice thing that I love to say about relationships is they're like, oh my gosh, we don't want to make you do that in 2
Right.
weeks. Let's just push it 1 week and we can work together to make sure, because, you know, at the same time, you know, she would have just powered through it even with the funeral. And I'm like, yeah, hey, first of all, you're not setting a good example for anybody if you don't give yourself time to grieve. Right.
That's right.
And these are people we've been connected with for years. I'm
Yeah.
sure if we let them know we're real people and we're just needing an extra weekend. And sure enough, it worked out. And this is where I think you're saying, you know, connections are so important, because it isn't just about the sell. It's
It's not.
it's an
It's not.
ongoing relationship if you're doing it right. Right.
That's
You know,
right.
there's so many times that I have worked with attractions where, you know, they were sold a system, but it's not meeting their needs. And now that person that sold it to them is no longer connected or able to advocate for them. And so that's something that I try to do differently in this business, was making sure that you're always connected with the salesperson. And I do think that that keeps integrity in that process, right? Because
Oh, 100%.
you know,
100%.
there are bad, I mean, look, the reason people don't like the word sales is because there are bad salespeople who
There
are
are, and there are bad engineers, and there are bad nurses and doctors, and
100%.
you know, but boy, we just get beat up on our end of it, and I do think that sometimes it's warranted, and I think that when that happens, it's because the seller thinks it's about them. The
Yes.
seller's thinking about their commission, they're thinking,
Yes,
and you can't do that. You have to think about the buyer.
you do.
People like to buy stuff. They don't want to be sold. You want to connect with them. You want to qualify the very best you can so that you understand how to meet those needs and then present those needs. I see sellers all the time present what they really, really love. And unless I'm trying to buy a dessert at the restaurant and I said to you, what's your favorite? Whatever you love, may not have anything to do with what I need.
Right.
You know, we've got to pay attention and listen. I was at a trade show one time and was high because I just had this great conversation with somebody who had stopped by the booth, and I was talking to them about all that we could do with their birthdays. That's what they were interested in, and I mean, I booked a training with them, and I was all excited. Right, the next guy comes up, and I just start pitch slapping him. I just start word vomiting all over him about how awesome we are, us, about building your birthday party, blah, blah, blah. When I finally took a breath, the guy said, "What makes you think we have any trouble with our birthdays?" Oh, you could have just taken a knife and stabbed me because I thought, oh, yeah. And then I don't have another chance, really, because that's how it works at a trade show. They're going to give you a second and then they're going to move
Yeah.
on. And I'd like to think I rallied a little bit, but I can't remember a good part to that story. Yeah, I can only remember the icky.
Well, but you know what? That's where follow-up comes in, though, right?
It does. It does. Yes.
You mentioned Grant Cardone. I mean, I've been a big student of his for many years, and one of the things that he really helped me resolve in my mind for those moments where maybe I've made a mistake. Because, like you, I love my product. I was a
Yes.
customer first, and I saw how much it helped us in our business. So I said, I
Yeah.
always come from a real place of knowing that we can help these attractions and these
Yes.
parks be more successful at what they're already doing. And while I am running a technology company, I think it is fair to note, like what you're saying is, you can't take the human aspect out of it. You would be surprised how often our systems are used to book these events and parties.
Yes. Yes.
And then they're asking us for things, and we're like, that deserves a call.
Yeah.
It's an incredible upsell opportunity. Why
That's
are
right.
we not training your team to talk to these people?
It's
Because
a follow-up.
it's a follow-up.
Yes.
It's a holy grail of sales, ultimately.
I'm all for a booking if it can happen online. I book all my airline stuff, all my hotels. I do all that online. But the minute I have an issue, I want to talk to a human, and I want it to be easy for me to get to a human. And I think when somebody books a party online, that's a perfect time for me to call and say,
Yes.
Sondra, I got your booking. We can hardly wait for your son to bring his 20 friends. I'm so glad you picked us. What made you choose us? Is there anything that I can add? Are you trying to pay for the parents' food? Because I can make that easy for you. We can let them know and handle that social awkwardness, or I can put some orders in for you. I've got some great group add-ons if you'd like. I mean, that takes 5 minutes.
Yeah, it's a great opportunity. I'll tell you, when I had my QZAR, so we had one of the highest party bookings in all of the QZARs. But our only competition at the time was Six Flags. It was in Santa Clarita, California. So I mean, it was either Six Flags or you could come to our place. And I think this was a little more palatable budget wise for most people than taking a whole 10 people to Six Flags. So we had that advantage. But I will say, I made it a point to call every party mom prior to the party, and at the very least sell her some party bags, because in every party bag was return game for every person.
Yes. Yeah.
And I will tell you, that one move got us probably in that 30% minimum.
Yes,
for sure. Because not only did they decide to rebook, there were times they decided, those kids said, I want to have my party there.
Yes.
But every single one of those kids came back with a family that paid, so they could use that pass. So, what I think I'm trying to say is that, there are these little micro sales opportunities that so many attractions and parks are missing out on, because they just won't pick up the phone and make that call. And I think you can send a message, because it's like you said, if somebody writes you on, I'm a big advocate for meeting people where they're at. If they write you on Facebook Messenger, you should respond to them on Facebook Messenger.
Agreed. And the time will come where you can meet them. But yes, but to just be transactional is not selling. And I've heard sales teams say, well, they didn't know what they want. I'm like, correct. They shouldn't need to,
Yeah.
because you're the expert. You're the one that's planned all kinds of wonderful events for hundreds of people. So they're counting on you. They need you,
Yeah.
And
They do.
even when they do know what they want, you still want to qualify them. Oh, tell me more about the event. If it's perfect, what does that look like? Where have you been before? Right? Do you have to make this
Yeah.
decision all by yourself, or are other people helping you? How do you decide what to spend on an event like this? Like, those are the 5 things. Oh, and then logistics. Everybody's good at logistics. Like, are you coming during the week or on the weekend, evening, daytime, blah, blah. And then they just start going. And if you'll ask those other questions that I was quickly going through there, then you know so much more. Because
Yeah.
people buy based on emotion and then justify it with logic. If I can find out the why of their buy, what are you celebrating? What made you call us? The customer is going to tell me everything I need to know in order to feed that back to them, so they'll know they're the smartest buyer in the world. Because that's what I want them to feel. I want them to feel like they've made a great decision, and that it's an irresistible opportunity to have their event at our place. So,
Yeah. I love that. Well, and I think one thing too that you mentioned is asking those questions. Like,
yes,
so often, even if you're not in a sales role, just asking questions can
it
help.
deepens the connection.
It does, and it can bring a lot of clarity to, even on the support side. For us, we have a support side of this being a tech company. I mean, our support team is the largest team that we have, and we have to often tell them, ask the questions. It's a connection. It's important. You don't really know what that person needs or what they're going through until you've asked the questions. And at the end of the day, there's a lot of control in being the person asking the questions, right? Because you are gathering this information and you're better able to judge where we go next.
That's right.
Because you can't read minds. And if you think you can,
No,
you're going to probably be sadly
you're gonna mess
met
up.
with a lot of opposition and people not happy with you,
That's
right?
right.
Like you said, like selling them something they don't want.
Yeah.
I mean, I am lucky in that I never had a chocolate cake get sent back,
Awesome.
but
Awesome.
because I mean, I worked in fine dining, so I mean, any dessert they would have gotten would have been amazing, but it's fair to note that it is important to know what they want,
It
and
is.
you're
It
not going
is.
to get that unless you have information.
That's right. That's right. Well, I think there's 5 specifics, and I think it's true with anything you sell. I certainly built it around selling events, but if we understand the logistics, where, when, how, and how soon would you like to change systems? Like, the logistics is in every sale. I think you have to understand the why of their buy. Um, why are you making this choice today? Why are you looking to make a change? Especially for you all, in their systems, they may have been
Yeah.
using somebody else, right? Who are we competing with? If you don't choose us, what will you do?
Right.
And it's interesting because with coaching and training, they probably haven't been doing it anyway, so they'll keep doing that. They'll keep just doing nothing. That's my biggest competitor, is that they will do nothing. And maybe that's arrogant for me to say, because maybe they buy from somebody else, and we certainly have competitors in the market, but the do nothing is more the competitor. We need to understand their tolerance for spend, and I think the money conversation is the last conversation. I don't think that's up front, and too many people go straight to price because they believe that's all the customer wants to know. It's a piece of what the customer wants to know, but it doesn't need to be the front part of the conversation, because it's always too much if it's the front part. And
Yes.
then am I talking to the decision maker?
Right.
And I don't think I don't think you can ever assume that anyone you're talking to isn't a decision influencer. So I never want to alienate anybody that I'm talking to. But I do want to make sure that I get the decision maker in the conversation.
Yeah, I love that.
Possible.
And it is true. You know, there's so many times that people are reaching out to us in our sales that are moving into our sales cycle that are not the decision makers, but they're certainly champions for us. They know that something needs to be fixed. They know that there's a process that, or maybe a pain point that they're having that needs to be solved, and they want to show up with a solution.
Yeah, that's correct.
And in my mind can be almost as powerful of an advocate for the sale for us or the process as someone who is the decision maker. The decision maker might, I mean, even in my own business as a CEO, I tell my team all the time, I'm going to say yes to everything. You guys do not want me on a sales call because we sell like we buy like we sell. Like I'm the easiest person to sell to.
The easiest
I say this all the time. Like, you guys do not want me on a sales call, but what I do need to know is this going to serve the purpose that you need?
Yeah.
And then from there, I'll find the money, right? You know, whatever that looks like, you know, if that's a move that we need to make.
That's right.
You know, and so having champions is really great. I also, you know, just something that came to mind from this conversation, you know, I can't say names, but I worked with a park GM. We had a long relationship. I opened 2 parks with them, and this last park got sold shortly after the pandemic. And one of the things that the VP of operations told me, because we had started talking to them about sales and I'd introduced them to some of the sales philosophies that we have here. And one of the things they said to me was, had we have had a stronger group sales, we would not have had to sell the park.
Yeah.
And that blew my mind, because I think what you're doing is so spot on. And it doesn't matter if it's a family entertainment center or a water park or a theme park.
Right.
This was a major theme park.
Yeah.
This theme park would not have had to have been sold for probably pennies on the dollar, right? Had they had been focused on group sales.
Well, I think there's wisdom in his assessment, because the group sales department goes and gets the business. They should be spending 25% of their time or so doing new business development. And listen, there's plenty of past party outreach. Every time somebody comes and has an event, all the events that got held last week, they deserve a call. Sondra, how much fun did your group have? We know we enjoyed the heck out of them. And is there anybody at your office that likes to have as much fun as y'all? You know, ask for that referral. And finally, when can I call you again? When do you think y'all might like to come again? Because I think people naturally think, well, we'll call them again next year about the same time. Oh no, especially with companies. You know, we're taking our people once a month, once a quarter, biannually. I want all that business, or at least want to have access to it. You know, if you go 4 times a year, can I get 2?
Right.
So I think there's wisdom in that, because that's the traffic you can control. The group business is a predictable traffic that you can control, and from that will come some organic walk-in traffic too, and you can build that. So.
Yeah, I love that. I think you are sharing so many fantastic gems, and we are just about approaching the hour, which this is probably the longest show I've ever done. And I'm sorry for keeping you so long, because I do not want this to end. I love everything that you're talking about. I see how valuable you are to this industry and what you're doing, because this is, if I could just bottle this up and give this to every park that I work with, I think that we would be making such a huge difference and impact on the longevity and the success of these attractions, because I do believe that this is a huge part that is not talked about enough, but so needed. And, you know, and it really affirmed my belief when I heard that from that particular park, that if we had had group sales, we wouldn't have had to sold. And, you know, and what that means is training your team, giving them access to information, giving them tools. Sales is a muscle that has to be developed.
And it does atrophy. it atrophies. It, like during the holidays when the phone's just ringing off the wall and stuff like that, then they slip back into transactional mode. That's why our coaching program, we have a weekly, a bi-weekly, and a monthly option, and depending on how fast people want to go, that's what they leap into, and it can just make a tremendous difference. You got to hold folks accountable. That's not a bad word. To me, it's like them being able to see if they're winning or not.
Hey, you know what? You'll love this. We have these mouth pads for our teams, and one of our values is accountability, right?
Love
Because
it.
I don't think that's a bad word either, and I think it
No.
isn't. It is important, and that's what a good coach does, right?
That's
So,
right.
so Beth, as we wrap up today, what I would love for our audience to know is what is the best way to get a hold of you, and while you're telling us, I'm going to put up a QR code here for your book, and I believe they can get to your website through this link as well.
Yes, they can. So the book's available on Amazon or with this QR code. If you buy it from TrainerTainment, I'll autograph it for you. Sondra, send me where you want me to ship it. I'm send you a book today. Okay. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Okay, so Amazon or the TrainerTainment website, which is what that QR code will take you straight to the store. I'm on LinkedIn. I'm on Facebook personally, and of course, the company TrainerTainment professionally as well. And I would love to connect. And then Beth at trainertainment.net. So reach out. Need more? I want to give it to you.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for being here and for sharing just all this wealth of knowledge with our audience. I can't wait to hear the feedback on this one because I think this is
Me
going to
too. Me too. Well, and I've streamed live to my space, and I'll let you know anything I get back. What a great work you're doing, and I'm just thrilled that you included me. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you. It's like you've been somebody, like I said at the beginning of the show, that I've been following. I love the work that you're doing, and this is just such a nice treat for me to have this conversation with you today. So thank you so much.
Yeah, have a great one.
You too.
Bye.
Well, isn't she great? I knew I posted on LinkedIn today that I was going to love this conversation. And this is one of the longest shows we've ever done. And I'm sure if you've been listening this whole time, you know why. But I want to invite you as put out the invite that if you are somebody who has information that can be shared with attractions so they can be better at what they do, and you want to share that, don't go to gatemaster.com. There's a link on our website to be a guest on this show so that you can help with this mission of helping attractions be massively successful. I appreciate all of you for joining me today. I hope you have a great week, and we'll see you next time.